Hey.
Hey. Whoa, you're here.
That's good. That was a good one.
What's going
I didn't
on?
expect that. Same old stuff, different day.
It's another noon and another containers from the couch.
Yes. Yeah, I move so much. Now my camera's out of, there we go. I can't sit still, and every time I move, I go out of focus. So
I lose focus, my camera loses focus. Stuff happens, that's the day and age we live in.
yes, I mean, and for me, that is especially true and especially painful. It is my daily life here. So what are we talking about today?
Well, we've talked a lot in the past about, like, for example, managed node groups. And we've kind of talked about automating things. And we've made fun of you for, loving Jenkins. And so this, today, I think we're going to kind of put our money where our mouth is a little bit and like connect some dots together and actually make some stuff happen. This is something that AWS, like, when you first come to AWS, you think, wow, over 200 services. This is huge. It's massive. I don't know if I'll ever learn it all. And then you start to realize that a lot of these pieces are really just, they're meant to be tools that you use in conjunction with other tools to accomplish, a bigger thing. And so I think today what we're going to look at is automating AMI rollouts, but it's not as simple as, oh, look, there's a new AMI, let's go use it. We have other requirements that we need to meet along the way. And there's tooling that can help us do that.
Yes. Yes, I agree.
So hopefully that's what we're going to talk about.
Hopefully. And so we're going to live demo this. And so first of all, looks like Koob Jerome is back for a second day in a row, at least that I've noticed. Welcome back.
Yes, welcome back.
And hello to the Smasher. And the Smasher asked if we played New World yet. I have not. I think that's that game that's Amazon Studios. It looks really amazing. I just haven't played it.
Yeah, and I know I'm weird. I don't play games. Well, I play like card games. So that's about it.
Yeah, it's totally okay.
I keep trying to get into games. I have friends that are like super into games, and they have game nights and they want me to play, and I try, and I can't like it. I can't look forward to it. And it's just, so I'm glad that I haven't had that as a hobby to burn money on.
Yeah, and forget the money. It's the time that it consumes out of your life. Like for me, it just consumes time. I love video games. Actually, NVIDIA just announced their newest gen graphics cards, the 30 series.
Yeah, I saw your tweet on that. Yeah, just lighting that money on fire.
Yeah, just take it. Take all my money, NVIDIA, please.
And see, I actually want to like games and want to like gaming because because of the time that it does take, because it's a completely different form of entertainment. It takes me away from from thinking about work and thinking about, like all this stuff, and it's not watching TV or whatever. So there's nothing to watch on TV right now. I would love to have a game to play. I just haven't found the right one. So
well, maybe I'll introduce you to Call of Duty. You can play some. We could try that. See how that goes. Well, here's what I'm gonna do, Brent. I'm gonna put together a portfolio of video games, and you and I will have an off stream session. Maybe we'll do it live on stream, and we'll watch you play video games and see how badly it goes.
Oh, it's going to be horrible. It's going to be so horrible. Is Fortnite the one? Why is Bob not allowed? Shouts Fortnite. Is that the one where you get dropped into the island and killed like within a half second?
They're all like that now. This is like all the video games. This is the new premise. You're on a plane, you get dropped in, everyone kill each other, and hopefully you win. I don't know. Yes, that's Fortnite. Fortnite's like cartoony, and actually Epic Games is Fortnite, and Epic Games does run on AWS.
Oh, nice.
That was a nice little plug there, huh?
Nice. Yeah, that is. Yeah. Because of all the tooling that we can provide, so we can provide you with all those little bits and pieces of automation. It reminds me of like back, when I was, not that I'm not into Linux these days, but there's so many Linux utilities and Unix utilities, and they're all like single purposed, focused. They're designed to do one thing, and you connect them all together to get accomplished whatever it is that you're wanting to accomplish. And I think that's what you're going to show us today. You're going to connect together a few different services.
Yes. So let's do that before we talk about video games the rest of the stream. One thing I want to say, though, I'm sorry, I'm being kind of cheesy, like plugging, like customer reference here. But honestly, it's really cool to think about a company like Epic, who made Fortnite, and they did it all on AWS. And customer reference, we have it online, the customer reference, but that's an example of like, hey, we have an idea to build a cool video game. Let's build it on AWS, and then basically just scales out as they need. And yes, they do use. Pretty sure they use EKS. I think that's.
I don't know. We should look into that.
I should just shut up, is what you're saying. All right, so let's go to.
They might. I'm not saying they don't.
I just thought I heard it. I thought I saw it on a customer reference. Anyways, let's talk about today. So we talked about managed node groups with Jesse, another developer advocate on the team, last week.
Yeah.
And we talked about managed node groups, but custom managed node groups. So, he had some examples of, I have a custom AMI. So I like the functionality that I get with managed node groups. However, I still need to control the AMI, or there's some other things I want to control in the launch template. So with custom managed node groups, you can do this. And so Jesse showed us some examples. I think he loves Red Hat. So it was like 4 Red Hat AMIs, all Stig hardened to his liking. Right. I think he did something with Bottle Rocket. But the point was, there was a managed node group that we wanted AWS to manage our node groups, the cycling of nodes and all that. But we still wanted to control what AMI was being deployed. So with all that said, that's really cool. But what about building a process around that AMI? So I know, Brent, why don't you tell me, if you were to build an AMI, a couple years ago, right, how would you have built that AMI?
I mean, I used to build AMIs a few years ago, and I went through a process where I would do everything. I shouldn't say everything, but I would do the steps by hand. So I would build an instance, customize it exactly the way I thought it needed to be. I forget, there was a command that was in the Red Hat based distributions that would like anonymize it again, or like clear out some of the pieces that, in preparation for replicating it. Run that, shut the instance down, then make an AMI. Then Packer came along. So yeah. I see Ansible is used. Why is Bob not allowed? Mentioned Ansible. So I definitely would automate those pieces with Ansible, then I would use Packer and sort of kick off that whole pipeline process of bringing up the instance, configuring it, and then shutting down the instance and converting it to an AMI. So
Amazon Machine Image, by the way. There was just a question, what is AMI? Amazon Machine Image.
Oh yeah, good call. And I always joke because I like to say Amy. So I'm glad I've been saying AMI because at least that's not as confusing as saying Amy, or as a lot of people like to say Ami. RM, RF, Etsy. Almost. Man, I wish I could think off the top of my head what that command was, but I'm drawing a blank. But it doesn't matter because now there's a new way.
And let's talk about that new way. So let's go to the screen share. And so I want to say, and I don't even, to be honest, I don't remember the exact date we released it. I want to say it was a year, maybe a year and a half ago, where we released EC2 Image Builder. So previous to EC2 Image Builder being released, which, by the way, EC2 Image Builder, if you're curious, this is a service that basically allows you to manage your builds of AMIs and what packages you install to those AMIs, versioning, testing, and all that into one service. Whereas prior to EC2 Image Builder being released, as Brent said, you had to use Packer. You did it yourself, where you spun up an instance, you ran a couple CLI commands, created the AMI. That was like super old school. But this is now a service that's built into AWS that you can use to automate the build of your images. So with that said, what we're going to do today is we're going to use, and you'll see I have some serverless in here. So
fancy.
I love serverless. I'm a huge fan. So any opportunity I get to write a Lambda function is really exciting to me. I love Lambda. It's easy, right? It's just it's a simple function that does a very specific thing. So
exactly.
So what we're going to build today is we're going to monitor the EKS optimized AMI, and anytime there's an update to that AMI, we're going to trigger an event, which will build an AMI that based on how I want it configured off of the EKS optimized AMI. And then from there, it's going to trigger a Lambda function, which will actually update our launch template and update our managed node group in EKS, which is going to point to that new AMI ID and that new launch template. And then the managed node group is going to handle cycling out the instances for me.
Nice. So there's like probably two major areas at work here on this diagram. There's Eventbridge, Image Builder, and then EKS, handling the managed node group cycling. But everything else is just kind of like sort of glue. It's holding a parameter, or it's triggering a function, or something like that. But those are the major services, and then we have these other pieces in the middle that just kind of glue it all together.
Yes, and so what I'm going to do right now is I want to actually push a new AMI ID to our parameter store, and I'll explain everything else in just a moment. But the reason I want to do that is it takes a few minutes for the image to build. So I just want to get that started. So what I'm going to do is, now for the sake of this demo, I can't actually look at the EKS optimized AMI parameter in Systems Manager, because I'd have to wait for that to be updated. So what I'm going to do is manually update it, which is going to simulate what would happen if AWS behind the scenes updates the EKS optimized AMI to the latest version. So you can see here, I'm just going to change the value, and this is all I'm going to do. So now imagine I didn't have to do this, and this was just something that was automated.
Yeah.
What'll happen is, so once that value changes, we have Eventbridge. So there's a question, what is Amazon Eventbridge? So Eventbridge is it's a fully managed event bus. It's a service offered by AWS. And essentially, this is a way to if you want to build, event-driven workloads and you want to trigger something on a specific event, EventBridge serves as that kind of central hub, that event bus, to notify your environment that a change has been made or something has occurred, to whatever resource it is that you're monitoring. What's really cool about EventBridge is it's not limited to AWS services. So there's a lot of partner functionality with EventBridge. So an example would be, like you can see here, you can connect from SaaS applications. So, Salesforce or like Datadog could trigger something. So in Datadog, if you're monitoring a particular resource and you want to then, trigger an event to take action in your AWS account, Datadog can integrate with EventBridge. So
Nice.
The idea of an event bus is just to have the ability to kind of connect all of your pieces through one centralized, location, basically.
If you think about event-driven architecture, everything is triggered, right? There's a trigger that kicks off something that, an event that then has to be processed, right? So this is just a central location for all those triggers to exist so that we can look for them and monitor for them.
Exactly. So actually, so I updated that SSM parameter. Now let's go look at EventBridge and let's see what that looks like. So I have an event bus, okay, and I created a rule. So this is my rule in the event bus. And if you look, I basically specify a pattern that I want to follow to trigger a target. So in this instance, my target is a Lambda function. By the way, you can also have an ECS service as one of your, an ECS task. You can trigger an ECS task. EKS, no, at least not at this present time. But the idea is it's not just limited to Lambda. I can use the event bus to fan out to multiple locations. But so in this case, I want to use a Lambda function because I like Lambda in this case, because why should I run something continuously that's going to monitor a change that happens once every couple months?
Right.
It's just, right? There's no need. So this is really, I'm only going to pay for the Lambda function when it runs for that short period of time to run the needful.
Yep. Which is going to be seconds, maybe even less than a second, depending on what it is that it's doing.
Exactly. So in this case, you can see I'm looking at two resources. I'm looking at SSM parameters. And specifically what I'm looking for is a change to an SSM parameter. And if you don't know what SSM parameter store is, very simple. It's a key value store in AWS, fully managed by AWS. So, and you version them and so on. Go ahead. Sorry.
Let me stop. Let's stop there for just a second. You changed a parameter that you control. I think it's that second listing there, right?
Yep,
but you're also monitoring a parameter that is that first listing. That's the one that the EKS service team actually manages. And you said this a minute ago, but it's worth pointing out again here. We, Adam and I can't really push a change to that. But if what you're after is just monitoring for, hey, the service team just pushed a patch to AMI, I want to take that and modify it my way and then roll it out. That's the parameter, that's the SSM address that you'd want to monitor. This other one is just for our own purposes so that we can trigger this, and kick off the pipeline ourselves, for demonstration purposes. But
Exactly.
normally, like, you could do this in your own infrastructure. You could have your own parameters that you want to manage and maintain and update, or you could simply subscribe, like that first entry, subscribe to one that the service team keeps updated. So as soon as a new AMI is pushed, then the ID is pushed into this parameter for each region.
Exactly. And so you saw I updated this parameter, which what it's going to do is on update, it's going to trigger this Lambda function. This Lambda function, I'm going to go into the code in just a minute, but I want to move over to the Image Builder service. And I just want to show you that while that happened, you can see I have a build triggering. So all I did, and realistically, if I'm just looking at a parameter that's managed by a service team and I'm updating accordingly, I literally don't have to touch anything. What's happening is when that gets updated, it calls a Lambda function, which is triggering an update to my image builder pipeline and then building a new AMI off of it. So what's going to happen is this is going to build a new AMI that we're going to point our node groups to use. So if we kind of like hierarchy, we have the Amazon Linux, EKS optimized AMI. I built my AMI on top of that. And now that's the one that we're going to use for our node group.
Nice.
Make sense?
Yeah. And the reason you might build your own is you need to include some, you want to, like Jesse was pointing out last week, Stig harden stuff, or you have custom software that you need to make sure is added for audit purposes, or there's any number of reasons why you might want to customize an AMI. But rather than starting from scratch, you could start from the EKS optimized AMI and then just add to or take away from that. And Texan Raj asks, can you use Bottle Rocket AMI if needed? And yeah, absolutely. There would be a couple of requirements. One is the Bottle Rocket team would need to be publishing into SSM parameter store so that you could subscribe to it. And then two, you'd have to, have the customizations that you want specific for Bottle Rocket. And you know how stripped down Bottle Rocket is. So like that would be a pipeline that would be quite different than, like an RPM based pipeline that I assume we're using here.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay. So something else I want to point out really fast. Take a look on the right side here. I'm running a kube control get nodes. And what I'm doing is I'm just showing you here's the nodes that I have running in the cluster right now in my managed node group. And for the demo, I'm pointing to an older image. So this is 17. We're using version 1.17. But you'll see here it's 1.17.7. The newest version is 1.17.9. So what we should see is as new instances start to roll in, we're going to see the version change as well. So just keep an eye on that as we're working through this. And then from a code perspective, oh, and you know what? I should say this. I should say this as well. This is not publicly available, this code yet. There's still a lot of work I have to do to make it generic, but I do have big plans with it. I'd like to make it a CDK construct where it could just be reused. You simply pass in a couple parameters and it builds. So anyways, it's in the works. So this is kind of like a developer preview.
Nice. Developer preview.
I was waiting to see if you'd react, but anyway. Okay, so just quickly to show you, this is the Lambda code. And my Lambda code is just Python. And all I'm doing here is, I love CDK. So it's
totally,
I can't stop talking about it. So the first Lambda function that runs, so if you remember, we go back to this here, it's updating the EC2 Image Builder, and it's running a build. So this is basically all it's doing is it's grabbing the current details of our image builder, of our pipeline. It's looking at the current recipe. So in EC2 Image Builder, you have the concept of recipes. If for those of you that that are from the chef days or still live in the chef days, which let's talk. Let's get you. Let's try to. But
yeah, it's time. We can let chef go now.
It's okay. I promise it's okay.
That's right.
But so anyways, if oh man, I lost my train of thought. Okay. So it has the concept of recipes. So a recipe is essentially a collection of packages that you want to install, or in the EC2 Image Builder world, they're known as components. So if you look at my latest recipe that I updated, you can see I've been testing a lot. Let's just quickly look here. You can see I have two components that I'm installing. And if you look at a component, one, I'm installing Python 3. So what's nice about this is you can build this in a way where it can be OS agnostic, right? Because obviously a Debian package manager is different than a rel-based package manager. So these are things that we have to consider. So here I'm installing Python 3, and it's obviously based on package manager. It's going to install the proper way. So that's just one component. And what's nice is this is it's a visual way. It gives you a visual representation into your recipe to build your AMI. And this SSM agent installed, this is a custom one that I wrote. So you can see, I never changed the name. I took it from the default demo. Isn't that nice? Hello world testing. But you can see here, I'm just running my phases. And this could very well be, if you need to, you want to enable SE Linux, you want to, whatever it is that you want to do on your operating system, you can have your own components and do them accordingly. So totally. I wanted to just show that. So let's see. Oh, go ahead, Brent.
I was just going to say, Mookie Monkey, welcome back, by the way. Long time no see. It says, hi, AWS crew. Why use Eventbridge versus SQS and SNS? And I remember on your diagram, you actually do use SNS, but maybe you could mention, like, what's the appropriate reason for using SNS in that location and Eventbridge in position 2?
Yeah, so that it's an interesting question that I don't know if I have a really good solid answer for. But what I can say is this: Eventbridge is this event bus that I can feed not only AWS services into, but it's natively integrated with AWS services and also partner services, SaaS products. So what that means is my barrier of entry is low. It's easy. I come in there, I can point to a resource in AWS, and off to the races I go. Whereas with SNS, SNS, obviously is good for that fan out approach, but this is more where I have like a custom type notification that doesn't maybe fit into the event bus scenario. And so here, let me give you the perfect example here is with the EC2 Image Builder. I wasn't able to find an integration in Eventbridge. So instead, EC2 Image Builder has an integration with SNS. So when the build's complete, it's going to post a notification to that SNS topic. So Eventbridge is a relatively new service. SNS has been out for a long time. A lot of integrations are built in with SNS. So I don't know, specifically, I would say if there's a direct integration with Eventbridge, if it's a partner solution, if it's something that just natively integrates with Eventbridge, I think that's going to be your best bet. But if it's something that's a little more custom, or it's a service you're using that already has integration with SNS, then SNS makes sense. SQS is a queuing service. I'm not sure I would need a queue in this case.
Right. Yeah, this doesn't seem like a queue situation necessarily, because, I mean, I guess it might be, but you're only going to have one thing queued for quite a while, because this doesn't update, more than once every few weeks. So, and once the whole pipeline has processed, in a matter of minutes, then it's just going to sit there and not do anything for, weeks on end. So you're not going to have like a backlog of a bunch of work that has to be burned down and and processed. So doesn't seem like a queue situation, but a notification situation, yes, absolutely. And I like your explanation of just what the integration offers. And Eventbridge offers some good integrations, on the one hand, and SNS offers some good integrations on the other hand. And you've used both. That's really cool.
Yeah, and I mean, you can just see with Eventbridge, like the level of integrations is growing. And this is, I think there's a lot of talk. There's been a lot of talk around these enterprise event buses. It's not just having something that's in AWS, but it's broader than that. You have SaaS products. You have so many different services and tools you're using. So I think Eventbridge is more of that centralized place to drop the events, and then you could also integrate. So I could drop an event to Eventbridge and then trigger an SNS topic, which could fan out and trigger to 25 different other services. So it really just depends.
Yeah.
Okay. So while we're waiting, the image is still building. But we're basically right now we're at step 3. Our AMI is being built with those components, which are a part of that recipe that I created. And once that's done, it's going to notify SNS, and then we're going to trigger our next Lambda function. But while we wait, I do also want to show you, I do have a Kubernetes, an EKS cluster up and running. And if you take a look here, you can see I have my managed node groups. Take note of the AMI release version. So the AMI release version is here, and I'm actually going to paste it to you, Brent, so we can just have that handy. So when the time comes and it gets updated, we'll see, look, here's a different AMI.
It ends with 1 CF.
Perfect. 1 cloud formation.
Oh,
so,
nice. Yeah.
And you can see the launch template we're pointing to is, I called it custom AMI, and it's version 1. So what'll happen is once our image is done building, and I remember I told you this takes a little while because it's spinning up an EC2 instance. It's a little slow.
Yeah, that process that I described, that I used to do way back in the beginning hasn't changed. There's just tooling that can help you move from one step to the next, but it's still got to bring up an instance, got to run through the installation, got to make, generate a new image off of it, and all that still has to happen. So it does take a while. What's great though is if you can automate this and tie it to that managed AMI that the service team puts out. This is the kind of thing that could sort of happen overnight, while you're asleep, and it could roll out for you, and you just wake up and it's done, and you don't have to worry about any of it. So that's what's awesome.
Yeah, and even if when you start, like, don't be scared to implement something like this. Start in your dev environments and just continuously deploy to them. Learn from that, and once you feel confident, do this in production. Have the proper tests in place, have the proper guardrails, so that if something doesn't work out, you have a way to fail over. But also the managed node groups, I will say, if your instances do not come up healthy, the managed node group's not going to deploy those latest instances. It's going to show as failed, and then you'll still have your existing instances in the environment. So
Mraga B8080 says, would this be a replacement of using a code build, code deploy pipeline, which I use to build and test AMIs currently?
Yes. My answer is 100% yes. And unless you're doing something that's so custom that it fits outside of the scope of EC2 Image Builder, I would say take a look at EC2 Image Builder. This should replace that for you. Yeah.
And his mention of test, like, can you show us does the build generate output? Can you see, what's happening or anything like that?
So this is one thing I've noticed, and I want to talk to the team and actually get a feature request here, because right now everything logs to an S3 bucket. So to get this data, I have to go to S3 and pull it down, which is great, but I'd love to see this in CloudWatch logs. That would be really nice for me to have that there. And I don't believe that functionality exists at the moment. So I wanted to speak to the tests really quick. So if we go to my pipeline, because it was mentioned, right? You're building, but also you want to test that these things work as you expect. So if we go to my SSM agent install, there's a test phase. And so what'll happen is once your image is, once your AMI is done, it's done building, it's going to run your tests for you. And if your tests fail, your image build fails.
That's cool.
The testing is built in, and you can see all my components, each component has its own testing, right? I test SSM, the SSM agent, different than I would test SE Linux or some other package that I would install. So anyway, you build that into your component, and then the image builder handles that for you. And let's look at the logs really quick. Brent, so we go to image build logs. So this is an example of what comes out of those image build logs. We have the YAML for each of my, let me each of my components,
Recipes?
which are part of
Okay.
the recipe.
Oh, okay.
I know, not confusing. But you can see these are just the components. And
Ingredients?
they should have done ingredients, you know? Okay, so this is the setup, and I'll tell you this actually behind the scenes, and this is just from me looking at the logs. This uses SSM, and it looks like it runs like SSM documents against the
Yeah.
instance. And so you can just see the output of what was ran, how it went. Also, there's you can see a detailed output which shows you each step, how it went, and then the output of your tests. So look, I have that test phase. You can see it was a success. Here was the output of my test. And I was just running a systemctl status, and it gave me an output. So it was successful.
That's awesome. So you could totally build even more automation around this if you wanted to. Now, would a failed test generate a new event in EventBridge that you could trigger something off of?
That's a great. I think SNS is where that notification goes.
Still, though, you could have like, the status of a failure actually, alert you between office hours, perhaps. But a success, you don't need to know about that. Just let it go through. So yeah, you could totally build stuff, automation around that. That would be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so
Austin,
that's. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. I was gonna move on to the next question.
Please do.
Austin Nuevo asked, "Can we integrate through WordPress from EventBridge?" And check out that partner page. I don't remember seeing WordPress necessarily, but it might be there.
Yeah, I don't see it, and I'm not sure what the integration.
I can imagine like a new blog post has been like drafted, and maybe there's some stuff that you want to trigger an event to kick off and go do things for it. I don't know, stuff. You can imagine all kinds of possibilities. But this is the kind of thing that it's open for the WordPress team to integrate if they want to.
Absolutely, and you can build a custom schema to fit for that integration specifically.
Nice.
So, all right. So I want to go back and see how my build's doing. Let's go back. Wait a minute. How do I see the set? Here we go. Let's go here. Okay, it's done. So my build is complete. Now, what I want to do is let's go to, now we're back to my EKS cluster.
Mm-hmm.
If I refresh, look what's happening. It's updated.
Amazing.
So now let's go back to my diagram. We've finished building. SNS received the notification. Our Lambda function is subscribed to that notification, that topic, I'm sorry. And on notification, it triggered the Lambda function, which updated my launch template. So remember, managed node groups point to a custom managed node groups point to a custom launch template of your own.
Mm-hmm.
And with your AMI defined. So what I'm doing here in this Lambda function is we update the launch template with the new AMI. And then once that's successful, we say this latest version of this launch template, we want to deploy it to the managed node group. And so that all happened while we were talking.
Nice.
And, I usually like to see these things live, but they happen so fast, it's hard to keep track.
Yeah, the build was slow, but everything else is pretty fast.
Yeah. And so now what's happening is if we go to EC2, let's take a look at my instances and let's see if anything has actually come up. So here you go. You can say I have 2 new instances coming in. And if we go back here, take a look now at my output. And do you see now we have 17.7 and we have 17.9, 83 seconds.
And because it's doing it through the EKS control plane, everything is being handled in a very safe way. We're bringing in the new instances. We'll migrate over the workloads, and then we'll shut down the old instances.
Yep, cordon and drain them, right? So
yeah,
basically, what we've done with this automation is we've kind of filled the gap that we have these great tools, but as you said, Brent, earlier, which I really like, is we needed a little bit of glue to bring them together. And so that's what we did. We brought a couple Lambda functions in. It's all event based. It's all event driven. And on anytime an AMI updates, we see it rolls out that new custom AMI to our launch template and then to our managed node group.
So what part of this stays running all the time?
EKS.
Yeah. So EKS is obviously staying running all the time. It's running our workloads, and that's what we want. But the rest of that diagram, that's all event driven, and it only comes up and does its thing when there's something to do. So when the team pushes a new AMI ID to parameter store, all the stuff kicks into gear, and it starts the work and it rolls out the new AMI and finishes. So we aren't having to pay for or monitor the uptime of or any of that stuff for all these steps leading up to it. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And it's a great point. Like, listen, there's many ways you could do this. You could have it would be running a container, create a CRD on your own and try to build all that too. But rather than having to sit and watch something and manage it, let's use the managed services that already can watch those things for us and trigger on events.
Exactly. So AM Raga B8080 asks, not sure if this is an option, but can the image builder launch builder nodes using Spot?
That's a really good question.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess no.
Yeah, you can only choose instance types there. I don't see a Spot option. That's something we'd have to get to, though.
Because there would be some occasions when you're building an AMI and you need it to be based on a certain instance family at the very least. So Spot can do that potentially, but Spot is all about diversification across as many instance types as possible, so that you're have a much better chance of getting capacity assigned to you. And so it's a little bit anti the Spot pattern for the most part, but you're only paying for the uptime of the instance while it's up and being built. And I believe once you shut it back down and create an AMI for it, you're not paying for that amount of time, compute time. So you have that going for you at least. It's only the up while it's being configured time that I think you'd end up paying for. And if you can do it, like you might run C3 8x larges in production. That doesn't mean you need to build on a C3 8x large. You could probably build on a C3 large or medium or whatever the smallest C3 might be, or C5 or whatever. Just stick with the same instance family, but pick a small version of it, and I think you'd be fine.
Agreed. Yeah. So so this takes a few minutes because, as Brent was saying, this is a graceful process where, new nodes come in, old nodes go out. So it takes some time. But what we'll see once it's done is the node group will be pointing to my new AMI. It'll be pointing to my latest launch template. And that's it. So we've literally fully automated that. I don't have to manage, as was mentioned earlier, I don't have to manage like code pipeline or code build for this. I don't have to manage any type of CI servers for this, like Jenkins, right? I don't have to do any of that. It's just a managed service that's handling this build for me. And then just a little bit of glue triggered this to automatically deploy to our Kubernetes cluster.
Very nice. How's do we still have 4 nodes in the cluster?
Let's see. It looks like we have a few more.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah, it would bring in some extras, and then it'll probably scale those back down after a bit.
Yeah. So this is the pattern I've seen: is it scales out like a few extra, and then eventually scales them all in, and we go back to our desired count, which was set to 2. So we'll get to that in a few minutes. But if you want to see a little bit of the code, just to put it into perspective here. Here's my my user data, and when we think user data, this is how I configure my instance when it starts up. My notes, I say funny things, but this is me testing. But yeah, so all I'm doing in user data here is I pass this to my launch template. And when an instance starts up, it's going to run these commands, which this is just joining the EKS cluster that I've built. So there are still some things here that are hard coded and so on.
Yeah. And Zypher2K asks, I missed the beginning. What triggered the pipeline? Something in Eventbridge? And yeah, but really it was an update to an SSM parameter that was kind of the very beginning of the pipeline. And that parameter is an AMI ID that is managed by the EKS team. So when the EKS team pushes out a new AMI, they update this SSM parameter, and that then creates an event in Eventbridge that we can subscribe to. And so that is what we use to kick off this whole pipeline.
Exactly. So, and you could, kind of tweak this and build it as that fits, however it fits for your organization or your team. For example, if you had, I like the parameter store idea because it's a place where I can see versioning of a value and I can see how it's changed over time. But also, yeah, you could have, if you have another team that manages or that determines what AMIs you want to build off of, they can always update a parameter and that can trigger a build. Yeah. So it doesn't have to necessarily be the EKS optimized AMI. I like this example because we watch for when AWS updates their the EKS optimized AMI, and then we add our own flavor on top of that and deploy that to our managed node group.
To bring it back and look at it from a container lens, this is like the EKS optimized AMI is like the from line in your Docker file, and we're just setting up monitoring to pay attention for when that image that's ostensibly upstream from us gets updated. We can go and trigger another Docker build and have that kick off and create a new image for us. So this is the same idea. It's just not Docker. It's AMIs instead, but it's still an artifact. Gets updated. We take that, customize it, make our own artifact from it, and then put that new artifact to use.
Yes, and listen, someone had said in the chat, I've been working as a dev for over 7 years and I have no clue what's going on here. And you know what? That's okay. Don't do this and just use Fargate. Like, honestly, like you could skip this if you don't have to deal with managing EC2 instances and you want just more of the serverless approach. Fargate is going to allow you to do that. And whether that's Fargate on EKS, Fargate on ECS, or Lambda, right? So yeah, really, like, you're not tied to one thing, but there's use cases out there where running your containers on EC2 instances makes a whole lot of sense. And when that happens and you have to manage, if you have to manage AMIs, this just helps you along that process, making it as easy as possible.
Yep, totally. So there's another question here. Since Eat, one of these resources in the Eventbridge looked like it was locked to a certain Kubernetes version, 1.17. Does your second Lambda invocation code contain some logic to verify that the image's K8's version of the image matches the one of the cluster, or would you say that that's of no concern here? Interesting question.
Good question.
That could be a good test, actually.
Well, so I think you probably called me out on some of my hard coding here, and some of my, obviously, like, when I built this for the demo, and as I mentioned earlier, there's more work to be done here, but you're absolutely right. So right now, this doesn't have any consideration for the EKS version you're on. What that comes from is when I make this more generic, the idea is you'll just say, here's the SSM parameter I want to point to. And then from there, when that AMI updates, it'll be according to your version. And what would happen is if you deploy the wrong version to your cluster, I mean, I guess it would have to be a super old version for it to fail.
Because there's some like forwards and backwards compatibilities that you could rely on, but also the parameter that you subscribed to was the 117 parameter.
Yes.
So you could potentially have this pipeline be codified and built based on whatever the version of EKS is that you're running. So you could like go gather that from your cluster, then build the pipeline to match. So that's totally doable, and probably the easiest, way without having to like go and build test cases and stuff like that. It's just have the beginning match the end, and you're good to go.
And just look down here, you can see I only have one node left on 17.7.
Yeah.
The rest are 17.9. So it's cycling them out very nicely.
So cool. So cool. And we didn't have to like really do anything. Once this pipeline is in place, then no work to be done. It could happen overnight. That's my favorite part.
Yeah. And so I do like, I have some things coded in here that need to be taken out and, as variables or parameters, but parametric, but a couple things that are required, like, there was a question. Let's go to that question first.
Well, I think you were getting to it. Is there an example repo somewhere? And you've said it already, but say it again.
Yeah. So no, not yet. I'm working on making this more better. And once it's better, I will, I need to make some more things parametric. I want to build a CDK construct out of this. So this is kind of very early phase, but I thought it was worthwhile to demo still. So long answer is no repo yet.
But
someday, hopefully. And DevOps, he says, I work in GovCloud, so no EKS Fargate for me. So hey, this is probably a good use case, although I don't know if Eventbridge is in GovCloud. Maybe not.
I lose track. Surely it is.
We can Google it.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to say, so there are just a couple requirements, and this is documented in the EKS docs, but when you're using a custom managed node group, you have to make sure you have some, like the bootstrap command in there, and all these things I have here need to be in your user data, which is your cluster CA, the API server URL, cluster DNS IP, and then the bootstrap script that specifically looks for the node group as well as the AMI ID. And then there's two security groups. We talked about this yesterday, I think, Brent, but there's two security groups in your cluster. You have to make sure you attach those to your launch template. And that's basically it. And then, of course, with custom managed node groups, there are limitations with the launch template. Like, for example, Spot integration does not work at this time. So I refer you to the EKS documentation just to read through the fine print there to make sure it fits your use case. But anyway, so security groups, user data, those are the important things to make sure that your nodes can actually successfully join the cluster.
Awesome. Very cool.
So that's pretty much it. I had a lot of fun building this. And, it's these types of things that I think are, you saw maybe there was 200 lines of Python code. But really, outside of managing my code, once if you build this in CloudFormation, CDK, Terraform, whatever you build it in, from a management perspective, I'm not managing anything outside of my EKS cluster, which I was managing anyways.
Yeah.
Right. These are all, as you said earlier, these are all fully managed services. They're only spun up when they're used. Spun up. I don't know how else to say it. Right. Yeah. They're only triggered when they're used on events, and that's it. So kind of neat to showcase that.
Yeah, totally. That's amazing. I love this demo, and I identify with it because this is definitely a problem that I used to have to contend with at previous jobs. Updating AMIs or discovering that there was an updated AMI, and then, planning the rollout and all that, this would just eliminate it all, and it could happen for me behind the scenes without any effort on my part. So so this is awesome. I look forward to seeing some example code published, and and otherwise, yeah, I mean, like, you could, if you're out there in chat or watching this after the fact, you could totally go and construct this same kind of thing without a lot of effort. So Adam, what would you say you spent on this time wise?
I mean, a couple days, days, just working on it. And because the truth is, prior to this, I was very familiar with Eventbridge, but I'd never used it, so it was kind of, and same with the EC2 Image Builder, because I really prefer to do things without EC2. I try to just run things serverless, but I can't always. So
yeah, totally. All right. So Algebra 97 asks, what time do you guys usually go live and which days? And that brings us to a good segue, because let's talk about that.
Yes.
We are live every day, Monday through Thursday. So we skip Fridays, and noon to 1 Pacific time in the US, 3 to 4 Eastern time in the US. So definitely follow us on Twitter. We try to announce the shows ahead of time. We plan about a week ahead. So we have next week planned out already, but we love to take requests. So definitely tweet at us any show ideas that you'd like to see us tackle, container related, ECS related, EKS related. We archive all of our shows to containersfromthecouch.com. And you can subscribe to us if you want to watch live. We're here on the AWS channel, but we also have our own Twitch channel, twitch.tv/AWS Containers, and you can subscribe to us and chat with us there at the same time. So we integrate both chats into the show and pop messages up, as you've been seeing, to try and answer them all along. So definitely join us for the live show. We also have a YouTube page. You can subscribe there and either watch our archived shows, or you can also watch us live on YouTube if that's a better experience for you. So yes. Coming up tomorrow, Pavan is going to join us, Pavan Mystery, and he's going to be talking to us about OPA, the policy agent for EKS or for Kubernetes, and he's going to show it to us on EKS. And that's going to be exciting to look at, how to enforce security policy and that sort of thing. And then next week we're going to have a schedule published probably by the end of tomorrow. But I can tell you right now we're going to skip Monday because of Labor Day here in the U.S. So we'll be on next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But normally it's Monday through Thursday.
Yes, and yeah, reach out to us. Like so yesterday's topic, I just really quick, I know we got to run, but yesterday's topic was completely from you folks. It was someone in the audience that said, hey, I'm really curious how to do this. Brent took it and we did it. So.
Exactly. And I think it was kind of sort of an extension of a topic. Someone, I think, mentioned talking about automating AMI updates during the Jesse's show about custom managed node groups. And so Adam took that and just, went off and built this. So definitely, tweet us with your ideas. We love to explore what you're looking for and talk about solving problems.
Yes. And I just want to say, DevOpsy, just nice note in there. Thank you. We appreciate y'all. Listen, we're all in this together right now. So
that's right.
If we can bring any light, and just try to bring some fun here while talking tech and cool things, we're happy to do it.
Absolutely. So. Absolutely. We're all in this together. So awesome. All right. Well, like I said, join us tomorrow, and otherwise we'll see you guys around on the internet.
Thanks, everybody.